So we don't know who Zenaida is in love yet. Like, who is she in love with yet? So let's just continue on. Chapter 12. The days were passing. Zenaida grew stranger and stranger, more and more unaccountable. One day I went to see her and found her sitting on a wicker chair with her head pressed against the sharp edge of the table. She drew herself up. Her whole face was wet with tears. "Ah, you," she said with a cruel smile. "Come here." I went up to her. She placed her hand on my head, suddenly seized me by the hair and began to twist it. "It hurts," I said at last. "Ah, it hurts, does it? And do you think it doesn't matter to me? And do you think it doesn't hurt me? Doesn't hurt me?" she repeated. "Aye," she cried suddenly. She cried suddenly when she saw she had pulled out a small lock of my hair. "What have I done, poor Monsieur Waldemar?" She carefully straightened the torn lock, curled it round her finger, and twisted it into a little ring. "I shall put your hair in my locket, and I shall wear it," she said, and her eyes were still full of tears. "This will perhaps comfort you a little. And now, goodbye." I returned home to find a disagreeable state of affairs. My mother was trying to have things out with my father. She was reproaching him for something, and he, as was his habit, answered with polite and frigid silences, and soon went away. I could not hear what my mother was saying, nor was I in a mood to listen. I remember only that when the scene was over, she sent for me to the study and spoke with great disapproval about my frequent visits to the old princess who, in her words, was une femme capable de tout. I bowed to kiss her hand. I always did this when I wanted to end a conversation, and went up to my room. Zenaida's tears were altogether too much for me. I simply didn't know what to think and was on the point of tears myself. I was after all still a child in spite of my 16 years. I no longer thought about Malevsky, though by Lovzarov every day glared more and more savagely at the wily count like a wolf at a sheep. But then I had no thought for anything or anybody. I gave myself up to fruitless speculation and was always looking for secluded places. I became particularly fond of the ruined greenhouse. I used to climb, I remember, onto the high wall, settle myself on it, and sit there, a youth afflicted by such misery, solitude, and grief that I would be overcome with self-pity. How I reveled in these melancholy feelings, how I adored them. Solitude and grief, self-pity. One day I was sitting on the wall staring into space and listening to the bells chiming. Suddenly something went through me, softer than the gentlest puff of wind, scarcely a shiver, like a scarcely perceptible breath, the sense of someone's presence. I looked down below on the road in a light gray dress with a pink parasol resting on her shoulder. Zenaida was walking quickly. She saw me, stopped, and turning back to the brim of her straw hat, she lifted her velvet eyes towards me. Turning back the brim of her straw hat, she lifted her eyes towards me. "What are you doing so high up there?" she asked me with an odd smile. "Now you always declare," she went on, "that you love me. Well, then jump down into the road with me, if you truly love me. Jump down into the road to me, if you truly love me." "So what are you doing so high up there?" "Now you always declare," she went on, "that you love me." Because she asked him with an odd smile. "Now you always declare," she went on, "that you love me. Well, jump down into the road to me, if you truly love me." Hardly had Zenaida spoken these words when I was falling through the air, just as if someone had pushed me from behind. The wall was about 14 feet high. I touched the ground with my feet, but the impact was so strong that I could not keep my balance. I fell flat and for an instant lost consciousness. When I came to, still without opening my eyes, I felt Zenaida near me. "My darling boy," she was saying, bending over me, and her voice was full of tender anxiety. "How could you do it? How could you listen to me when you know I love you? Oh, please stand up." There you go. Her bosom rose and fell beside me. Her hands were touching my head, and suddenly, oh, what became of me then? Her soft, fresh lips began to cover my face with kisses. She touched my lips, but then Zenaida probably realized from the expression on my face that I had regained consciousness, although I still kept my eyes closed, and rising quickly, she said, "Come, get up, you naughty boy, you idiot. Why are you lying in the dust?" I got up. "Give me my parasol," says Zenaida. "See where I have thrown it? Don't look at me like that. It is too ridiculous." "You aren't hurt, are you? Stung by the nettles, I expect. I tell you, don't look at me. Why, he doesn't understand a word. He doesn't answer," she said as if to herself. "Go home, Monsieur Waldemar, and tidy yourself up. And don't you dare follow me, or I shall be furious and will never again." She did not finish her sentence and moved quickly away. I sank down on the road. My legs would not carry me. My arms were smarting from the nettles. My back ached, my head swam, but at that moment I experienced a sense of bliss, such as I never again felt in the whole of my life. It flowed like a delicious pain through all my limbs, and finally resolved itself in rapturous leaps and cries. Yes, indeed, I was still a child. It flowed like a delicious pain through all my limbs, and finally resolved itself in rapturous leaps and cries. That sense of bliss. I was still a child.